Hello and welcome to the Permaculture Herbalism segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I am your host, Tennille Christensen from Earth Mama, where I teach people how to thrive and get skilled for sustainability. As an educator, kitchen witch, and plant lover, I welcome you to tune in as I interview permaculturalists from around the world. We will learn holistic ways of integrating plants into our homes, gardens, and communities for healing. Together, we will explore the art and science of this regenerative design system and harvest the collective wisdom. Permaculture offers a pathway to empower people to develop their lifestyles and landscapes. So let's discover how to grow and know plants with a purpose. Asha Lily Green is an Ayurvedic doctor and natural fertility specialist whose work bridges the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda with the regenerative practices of permaculture. Rooted in deep reverence for the intelligence of the earth, she guides women and couples through transformative fertility and pregnancy journeys that reconnect them to their natural rhythms using food, herbs, and cyclical awareness. Welcome, everybody. I have Asha Lily with me today, and it's been a podcast that I feel has been a long time coming because we have been working, or she has been supporting me in this realm. I think 2 years ago, I started the Conscious Conception program. I found her because of her Ayurvedic approach and the strong relationship I see with this life science and Ayurveda and permaculture. And so I just felt in really good hands to take that journey of preconception and planning. And here I am now, just about to turn 41, 35 weeks pregnant, and have been journeying through her Fertile Essence program as well with the other mama bears out there who've successfully being able to conceive children. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your Ayurvedic wisdom with everybody today, Asha.
Thanks so much, Toddy. So wonderful to be here. And yeah, feeling really blessed you have to be a part of the show.
Beautiful. Well, let's just jump straight into question one, which is why is permaculture an important aspect of your life?
I love this because permaculture actually predated, in a way, my Ayurveda, journey. Permaculture has been a part of my life for a long time. And really, to me, permaculture is, about the philosophy and the principles. And it mirrors really beautifully the core principles of Ayurveda, which is foundationally to me about working with nature rather than against it. And especially the principle of permaculture about being about people care, about nurturing ourselves, our communities, but what's good for future generations, not only what's good for today, but also what's good for future. And that really, really aligns with my personal values and, my work, since with Ayurveda. Another aspect that I find I really love between the parallels between permaculture principles and Ayurveda is about this sattvic and sustainability. Ayurvedic living really promotes this kind of sattvic state, which is all about purity, harmony, and naturally this mirrors a foundational permaculture principle, which is to live simply, to live consciously, and harmoniously with nature. And so just as Ayurveda kind of studies nature's rhythms to restore balance and health in the body, permaculture also follows that natural intelligence, and the natural systems, to grow food efficiently and regeneratively, but also to live in harmony with the environment and our planet. And that's fully in alignment with the way that I, live my life and, the work that I continue to do with Ayurveda. And the other thing that I feel like, permaculture is really important in the context of what I currently do with Ayurveda is that, historically, Ayurveda was practiced in close connection with the land. So a big part of my work before I even moved into fertility, conscious conception work and pregnancy was all about feeling that connection to the land with seasonal diet, seasonal rhythms, using wild crafted herbs. I went down a big tangent, about really indigenous herbal wisdom, and how can we, source more herbal wisdom and plant wisdom from, the local environment here in Australia. And using homegrown foods is all part of daily rhythm and a part of health. So reuniting kind of these practices through permaculture is not only like a return to those traditional ways, but also really powerful for our own healing and for the planet. And that's very much just aligned with, the work that I do today and my own personal values. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I see it as a really good path to incorporate health and all of those principles in a very embodied way. And especially like with the conscious conception and having you as a coach where you're checking in regularly, like weekly, and customizing the food as medicine diet to really support that balancing and harmony within the body. What I found really interesting is the initial observation, like the first principle is observe and interact, and just how fundamentally different that is when you go to a traditional, not traditional, when you go to a conventional doctor or GP or whatever. It's such a short, sharp visit, and in comparison to working with a TCM or a Ayurvedic doctor, it's the initial consultation is so deep, and the observation is such a yeah, it's just a deeper exploration and understanding, the doshas and our bodies, and then and not just like you telling us, but also educating and informing of what that means and how to work with, the seasons and the foods and different aspects of the tools that are within it. I don't know if tools is the right word, but um even beyond that, like
Yeah,
the self
absolutely.
massage, like all of the aspects of how to rebalance. It's like, the soil's out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have these ways of improving it. And you have this like life science to say, okay, you're out of balance. This is why, and this is how, and what to implement to come back to that beautiful space within our own bodies, our own landscape.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up as well, because that is really a fundamental, that observing before, seeing the whole picture, seeing how all the systems are interacting, not just, okay, you're constipated, or okay, this is happening, or, not just isolating, individual symptoms, but Ayurveda actually goes to the roots, literally goes to the depth, the roots of the systems in a similar way to, permaculture teaches to actually observe first, and I absolutely love that. Yeah, that my initial intakes are very comprehensive, because I feel it's so important, and that's really following, the principles of Ayurveda in making sure that I'm seeing the whole picture, and it's about all aspects. And, all the kind of rituals and tools and things that I utilize is to kind of, yeah, is to kind of make sure that we're caring for the whole of you, the whole person sitting in front of me. I don't just see my clients as, okay, you know, person, Sarah, whoever it may be, is struggling with X, Y, and Z. It's part of a bigger picture. And, that's similarly very much with the permaculture principles of observation, observing nature, observing the patterns of the body, but also the seasons, like the seasonal influence you were really fascinated with, if I can share, like, and
Yeah.
I bring that into my work. Okay, if I'm doing or guiding a fertility cleanse or a conscious conception program for a client and for a couple, well, I need to take into consideration the season also that they're in, and also what their natural constitution is. And all of that is a relationship. It's a divine relationship. So it's not just, herb for X condition, but it's taking into all of that into consideration. And I love that with permaculture, in that observation, it's all also about observing to kind of really take that step back and to see, intelligently, how can we approach this? And Ayurveda has that same kind of initial first important step, rather than rushing into treatment protocols, rather than rushing into, you know, IVF, for example. It's like, hang on a minute, let's actually take a step back. Let's look at let's observe, let's interact, and let's actually see what is really needed for this very woman in front of me. That's what I do in my practice. So,
Mm, that's beautiful. And I feel like when people ask me what permaculture is, there's always that like, well, it's a design science aspect. But ultimately, I think what it leads to is a lifestyle. Like that's the outcome. You can't have a permaculture garden without living it as a lifestyle. And I think Ayurveda is very much the same. There's all these aspects that you really want to
mm,
adopt and weave into your life because it just brings so much goodness. And yeah, and even, I'm now planning for, the fourth trimester, or, my postpartum phase. And I just love the wisdom that Ayurveda has in that space as well, like many other traditional cultures. And like going from so full to empty, and having like, well, what do you do in that space? It's like I'm looking forward to these beautiful warming meals and keeping my body warm and resting, and just giving, like the giving myself permission to follow this protocol. And that has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And what's the saying? Like 42 days of rest is like setting yourself up for the next 42 years of your life as a woman, as we move through menopause and things like that. So I just think
yeah,
having this tool, having this,
that's it.
complementary, because when we look at the permaculture flower and all of the different domains and elements, there's the health and well-being petal that exists within the flower. And Ayurveda is part of, like, it's noted in there as something that is synchronistic or symbiotic with all of the principles. And that's why I, went down the rabbit hole and then found you. And that's why we've been on this journey together, because it's so aligned.
So aligned. I never thought about it the way that you actually just described as being a lifestyle. But of course, I think about Ayurveda very much as a lifestyle. And what came to mind when you were just sharing is that they're both not just sciences. Like Ayurveda is often described as a life science, a living science, similarly to permaculture, right? It's a living science, and it's a science in the sense that it's founded on these principles. And when you apply those principles, though, are very much life principles that you can apply to many aspects of your life and your lifestyle. And that's why I am personally so passionate about Ayurveda, and permaculture comes beautifully into that mix, is because we can use, there's no such thing as right or wrong as well. It's like actually just really truly understanding the principles of life and how to live in alignment of what's actually good for us, and what's good for us might actually be a little bit different to what's good for someone else. But fundamentally, we're using the principles to live in harmony and to not take but to give back, to support ourselves, to support the future generations. And talking about fertility, that's like that's really it for me, and just kind of lights me up, because previously, to kind of going to fertility, I was all about regenerative, preventative healthcare. And fertility is really like you're saying, as you're about to move into the postpartum period, like the preconception work that we did together, and that the women are doing with me together, is literally setting yourself up to have a healthy child that is for your future baby, the future generation. And then, as you, mama, taking that 40 days of really rest and rejuvenation, looking after yourself, that does really set yourself up for, the rest of your, moving it all the way to menopause. because that's such a sacred window. If depletion happens, then it just kind of goes much deeper into the tissue. So preserving that 40 days as a sacred space is such a beautiful gift, and something
Mm.
I'm really passionate about getting this out there more and making it more accessible, and just the knowledge, it doesn't have to be complicated either, but just taking that intention of the principle, is what I think the takeaway.
Absolutely. And so the diet aspect of all of the beautiful food, all of the plant jams and ghees and the medicines that is incorporated into it as well. I'm wondering if you could share how you integrate plants from like a healing or herbalism perspective into either your home, garden, community, or all of the above.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, plants and nature's medicine is literally interwoven into every part of what I do. I use medicines, I use plants, and herbs, as part of my work with fertility and pregnancy. And this is really, I deeply integrate this into all of the work that I do with the women and the couples that I work with and in my community. So, in the Fertile Essence program, we use specific herbs and plant based nutrition, food as medicine, to really reset and reclaim fertility where there has been fertility challenges, or restore and optimize, reproductive health and well being, not just reproductive health, but total well being. Because side note, fertility is a byproduct. The fertility, when we think about fertile soil, it's the byproduct of all the other nutrients and minerals and, the total surrounding environment that nourishes that. So, in the same way, utilizing herbs into my work and into the community of women that I'm working with is, able to really benefit and support them to reclaim their fertility, especially with conditions like PCOS, endometriosis, and even unexplained infertility. Ayurvedic wisdom around the use of herbs and plants is so powerful. So I do, individualized protocols, obviously, and blend that with seasonal eating, as you mentioned, like seasonal nutrition and herbal rituals, but also educational support as well, because I'm a big believer in reintroducing this ancient knowledge in a modern context. There's a lot of Ayurvedic herbs and things that you know are becoming more extinct, and becoming more endangered and harder to find. And so by using the principles again and education and introducing herbs in a way that you know acknowledges our modern life and our modern context of today, it really helps. Is I find that it really helps women to reconnect to their own natural rhythms and their fertility in a really empowered way, because they understand the use of certain herbs and medicines for their own fertility, for their own treatment, rather than just being prescribed, like, take this supplement, not really understanding what it's for. Whereas the way that I approach my work with herbs and with plants is very much, well, first of all, using actually minimal prescriptions and really revering the herbs and the medicines that I prescribe, making sure that I communicate. Of course, it's nice to know, but really in that communication and explanation of what the herbs and medicines are for helps my clients and the women I'm working with. And I'd love to hear your experience of that, but to connect. Okay, what am I taking? What's it good for? And this helps to, I find, I try to impart, I guess, the sacredness of these herbs, and the even ritualize sometimes the taking of the medicines themselves and the herbs, encouraging no wastage as well, and to really, even if clients sometimes don't finish the course, to try and incorporate the use of certain herbs and medicines again later in their treatment plans. Um, but yeah, a big believer, coming back to kind of that living lifestyle science, that the herbs are really boosted in their efficacy by living by certain principles of nature, like the circadian rhythm, principles of nature to support hormonal balance, to support the herbs and their efficacy by making those lifestyle and nutritional changes.
Yeah, and I think it's an easy way to experience it as a ritual. Like if you understand it, why and what it's doing for your body, you can be more open and receptive to the medicine working. But the fact that it's delivered, or the herb is in like this yummy honey jam, or it's in a ghee that you're mixing with your milk, like it's delicious, and you can sit there with a bowl or cup and receive it in a ritualistic way as opposed to popping a pill.
Absolutely. I'm trying to remember now what some of my prescriptions have been for you, but definitely there's that ritualistic aspect. And, not all, of course, because, a lot of medicines, really benefit from that bitter taste. But having said that, a lot of the Ayurvedic medicines, specifically for fertility and pregnancy, because we're working so much with that rejuvenation quality, that nourishing quality that's often needed and lacking, in our modern society, right, where we're kind of dry and burnt out and kind of stressed. So the antidote to that of a lot of the formulations and the medicines that I use are ghee-based medicines. They're lehem or rasayana-based medicines. So they're actually delicious. Like all the jams, they're almost like a sweet spicy chutney, and these forms of the medicines also is a big part of Ayurveda because they're more bioavailable for the body to receive. So rather than taking, which I do still use, of course, like compounds of like, dried herbs and things like this, certain compounds of dried herbs, which we call churanas, but utilizing, these formulations that are specific for that resign and rejuvenation. Yeah, a lot of women love the ritual, like ritualizing, taking their medicated ghees and their tonics in the hot milk at night before bed. It's like it can become a real treat when you get into the vibe.
Yeah, yeah, I love that vibe. I definitely had the trifler and the bitter, powdery taste as well, but I could feel it working on my body, and I like the approach that it's not just as a woman wanting to conceive, all about me doing it as well. It's like our partners are also doing a cleanse and investing in, their personal health to help with the conception aspect, because it takes two to tango. um, and yeah, so and that being very different because of our constitutions being very different as well, so it wasn't just like a one size fits all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's around 80 to 90% now of the women that I'm working with, their partners are joining. I've been doing, really educating on the importance of that. And it's so profound. Partner support is so important, I find, for the women to really get the results and the support that they feel that they need. So it was so wonderful, doing the program together, with the both of you, with yourself and with Blake. Um, and I really see that the men get so much benefit too. Like so often, that the men they start off just feeling that they're supporting their partner, and of course that's a beautiful intention already. But so often, I think that the men are really, once they kind of on board and once they experience some of the benefits of the cleanse, for example, or even just the nutrition, or taking different herbs, because yes, I prescribe different herbs, different slightly altered protocols for the man, the male partner, and for the woman. And so he gets a lot of benefit too, even if that's just more energy, more strength, more capacity to actually, be stronger, stamina, resilience, which is like a lot of the things that men really notice and vibe from. Libido, is another one. Just that is all like a positive benefit. And we know, of course, it's obvious, right? It's 50-50. But with the science is showing that more and more scientifically now proven that actually male partner fertility health is a really big contributing factor to not only conception but pregnancy outcomes. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And a lot of couples, I'm not sure how it was for you too, but it's such a beautiful bonding. Like even if couples who come to see me, they've been together for 10 years, even couples that have children already, they've been through this kind of process before, even if they've had brought consciousness to the conception process previously. going through this process together, really, highlighting that intention, coming together and doing this kind of conscious conception work is just, I see the transformation in couples themselves and just their relationship, their deepening their bond, their connection, and just what a powerful intention to really co-create and conceive with that intention of like really supporting the health of individually yourselves and together, coming together like that.
Yeah. And that was us. Like we've been together for a decade. We already have two children. And so, yeah, it's a lovely commitment to make before taking the next important steps. And I think for us, we have done a lot of like pre-diet things for our medicine journeys. And so cleanses and, sharing that experience of using certain foods or letting go of certain foods and just being in this kind of dieta phase at different times in our life. But what I really found special about this one is that you do a cleanse, but then equally to that is the rebuilding and the rejuvenation. And I feel like out there in the world, there's a lot of conversations around doing a cleanse and detoxing, but on the other side of that is like, and then what, like what's the protocol for refilling our cells after we've done this detox and really rebuilding from a replenishing intention. And that kind of both sides of the coin really, I loved
Hmm.
that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that what you just described, so the cleansing aspect, the fertility cleanse, is a big part of the work that I do, and actually supporting women and couples to really reclaim their fertility and support themselves to have a healthy, natural pregnancy. But what I love you just the way that you shared that, because that is my approach of really cleansing and then nourishing is completely the Ayurvedic preconception process. This is what is taught in the ancient texts of Ayurveda. Like, this knowledge is arguably thousands of years old, which is just amazing when you think about it. This is time tested knowledge. And the basic principle is, yes, we detox, but the purpose, a lot of people focus on the detox because that is in many ways, that is kind of the cure. In many ways, that is how we are really approaching fertility challenges, health challenges that may be blocking or in the way of conceiving and having a healthy pregnancy. But the purpose of detoxification is rejuvenation. And I have witnessed, I'm still amazed at the transformation I see in the women, honestly, that I work with, because it's not, people think detox often is such a harsh kind of, strong, is going to be intense. Like, I have a lot of women that, are concerned about what this is. First of all, the Ayurvedic approach to detoxification is very different to other types of cleanses, maybe other types of fertility cleanses, liver, gut, gallbladder cleanses, etc. But then the rejuvenation is really the key. If we cleanse and then you just, okay, I'm wiping, shaking my hands, okay, done, next, we don't actually get the full benefits. And the benefits don't actually, solidify. You get the benefits, but the benefits really come from that rejuvenation. And it says in the ancient texts of Ayurveda, we should cleanse and then ideally, right, ideally, 3 times the length of time for rejuvenation before conception. And so that's exactly what I guide. Of course, it doesn't always happen in that timeline, and we can adjust. We can definitely work with, I work with the women and couples with their timeline as well. But, my program really guides you through that detox, which is exactly what you did with me together. We do the detox and then we allow that time for nourishment, rejuvenation. It's really building the quality tissues, really building healthy egg quality, healthy tissue, which we call shukra. And this is also about building like our ojas, our vibrancy, so that we have the healthiest conception, the healthiest pregnancy, and also the healthiest child. So, yeah, I love that you picked up on that. And talk about, even apart from fertility, it's an absolute recipe for really coming home to yourself. Like, we all have stress on some level. A lot of women, when they come to see me, are stressed on some level, whether they're anxious about their age and they feel time is running out, and that is a huge stress factor, or they have been struggling to get pregnant, and that is creating a stress, which is understandable, but that is, that really does take a toll over time, right? Not just a little bit of stress, but over time, that really does take a toll. And even aside from fertility, like the transformation I see that women experience through doing the detox and rejuvenating, they're like they've come back home. They come back home to themselves. And it's such a blessing, honestly, to witness that. They just, feeling more calm, feeling centered, feeling, I trust in myself. I got this. And then they get
Mm,
pregnant without even trying, without even hardly trying. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to be a part of that.
it is. Yeah. And it gives permission. Like, I think part of the the prescription or protocol is to really slow down, and simple things like body massage and breath work and yoga, proper sleep at the right time. Like, they're all very simple things that we know we should be doing, but sometimes we need to be coached to do it. And I certainly, you know, yeah, life is full and I can go into that burnout phase. So for me, it was like, yeah, having full permission and intention to drop into that space. And then, as you know, we finished it, and then all the ducks were lined up, and we were like, "Oh, actually, let's go traveling." And we just created a few more things to do, but in a way where those principles carried through. And it was, we have we have this in family joke now with family and friends, where it's like, if I'm eating something, they're like, "Is that Ayurvedic?" It's not Ayurvedic. Just because I was so on the food regime. I was like, nope, not having that. No. And so it's fun to bring play and that into it. But yeah, just that continuous weaving of the lessons learnt through almost a year of spaciousness, where the intention still was very strongly around nourishment. And then when we decided, it was like the baby
Mm.
came straight away, like, even with that space between the cleanse, it, 2 moons, and then here we are. So it works. Not that we went down IVF and we have other comparisons, but I just think it's just all naturally unfolded. And if
No.
people are out
Yeah.
there and they're my age, I think this is a really simple way to explore the possibilities without the stress and the financial, like all of the stuff that IVF involves. Like, and that could be a path for some people, but I think if you started in this space, then you probably have a very good chance of success. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to share that with, our listeners, and have you
Absolutely.
in this space sharing what you do, because it's really powerful.
It is. It is. It's Ayurveda is powerful, and it's just being able to, I feel so blessed now to be able to work with women and couples all over the world that can access this knowledge and can understand this for themselves. And I love this part of your story. I love this part of your story, Toddy, because, you know, you're not the first to, you're not the first woman that I've guided through the program. And I'm not saying this about your story, but previously, with other women that may be super anxious about the age, in their 40s, right? And they're told that IVF is their only option because of their age, purely because of their age. Now, age is a factor, but it doesn't determine your fertility or your time to having a natural pregnancy, your chances of having a completely natural and healthy pregnancy, as you are living proof, right? And this is what I really want women to know, more women to know, regardless of age. But I love that aspect of your story is like, you did the program, you felt great, okay, we're ready. but now we feel like we have all our ducks in a row. Now it's created the kind of the safety, or like, I don't want to put, this is how I perceive, but it creates that kind of sense of, oh yes, everything, okay, my body's capable. I know that I'm fertile. I know that everything's aligned. It creates that sense of, okay, now I have the time. I'm not in that rush. And I think that timing, divine timing, is such an important thing in Ayurveda as well. Like nature's wisdom, and that intuition, to actually take some time to do something that's important to whatever. We are told as women that, like, the clock is ticking, like age, your time is running out every month that goes by. Women are freaking out, but it's not like that. It's not like that at all. And that's what I have commonly seen, is that women and couples, they finish the program, they feel like so much trust, and so much confidence in their body, that they actually decide to wait. They actually decide to wait. And I feel like that's maybe their real divine timing, when they can cut the noise, or any fears or any anxiety about not being able to conceive. But that takes an incredible amount of trust. And obviously that it's really supported to do a program like Fertile Essence, because then it's not just like, you really know, that's exactly what I teach. You really know how to actually read your fertility, your body. You really understand your own fertility signs, and you understand. And so that gives the confidence. It's not just kind of like, oh, we'll just do a detox. No, I actually guide that in a way that it becomes a living, embodied reality, that you feel confident. And you went traveling, and you did some things, and then got pregnant your second try. Like, that's incredible. Such a beautiful, beautiful story for, I think, other women to hear, and to know that you have got options. There is a completely natural path out there. There is a way that supports your body to do what it's intended to do.
Absolutely. So, do you have a favorite plant? Because I know you work with lots of them, that you can recommend as a must-have to have in people's home gardens, and if so, why?
Yeah. So I was reflecting, on this myself, actually, before coming on today. And really, my personal use of plants and herbs is now a lot in formulations. So I did want to just touch on that, because that's something else that I feel really inspired by, is Ayurveda uses a lot of these really ancient recipes almost. And so that is, I only use traditional formulations in my work, classical Ayurvedic formulations, which basically just means like recipes that are super ancient. Like, I don't use any modern recipes. I don't use any modern formulations. So I use a lot of formulations specifically in my work, and it's the synergy of that specific recipe that actually has the effect of that medicine, of that herbal prescription. And so I find that really I find that really, really inspiring in terms of, and so in terms of plants and medicines that I use, I actually recommend that people have like almost an emergent, I am a big proponent of having certain herbs and formulations and medicines like in your kitchen cupboard, like your own emergency first aid kit. It's actually like a whole idea I've had for many years that's just kind of parked there, that I think would be such an amazing thing to have, like an equivalent of homeopathy, those home kits that are just everywhere at health food stores, but an Ayurvedic first aid kit of different herbs, different formulations, because Ayurveda has a whole plethora of herbs and medicines that can be used, for common coughs, colds, cuts, sprains, bites, inflammation, infections, etc., that can be really, really helpful. But in terms of just practically to answer your question, I currently, I when I was living on community and on land for many, many years, and having gardens, and having using permaculture principles, a plant that has always kind of spoken to me, I guess, more personally, is Tulsi. So Tulsi, holy basil, it's referred to as the queen of herbs. And I guess I've just really developed a personal relationship with Tulsi, as we can with any particular plant or herb, we can really have that connection with the energetics. But to me, Tulsi really has kind of, I love that Tulsi has more of a, I guess, spiritual significance of Tulsi as well. And in the community that I was a part of for many, many years, we use Tulsi in some of the rituals and some of the practices. And, I planted Tulsi all around, we planted Tulsi all around our home for protection. So, and also, even though we have to be careful of the use, for those thinking, listening who might be interested in fertility or conscious conception, we need to be careful of the use of Tulsi with hormonally for fertility. But it definitely can be used also for hormonal support. But it brings that kind of sacred quality to any space. And, spiritually, when I say kind of spiritually, I mean, for those who are kind of curious or that way inclined, Tulsi is kind of connected to Lakshmi as well, the goddess of abundance and devotion. So to me, Tulsi is kind of representing that purity, that protection, that devotion, and that connection to the divine. And, helping to purify, create a sacred environment. It's really, and in that sense, sparking that kind of devotional quality. Also, it's just so freaking beautiful. There's like, we had growing like always the 4 different types of Tulsi, all the different colors of their leaves. Smells good, looks good, can add it in teas. But it's also, I love that kind of spiritual association, I guess. It is coming more from the kind of Hindu Indian cultural, perspective of the qualities of Tulsi. But I do really love and connect with those qualities of kind of heart opening, spirituality, devotion, and that Lakshmi protection, but also abundance qualities of Tulsi.
Mm. Yeah, that was one thing when I traveled through India. I was really amazed at seeing how all of the little houses, even from the villages to the cities, how they all have a tulsi plant in their little garden area just outside of their front or back door. That's culturally, I was in my early 20s and I just thought, wow, that's an interesting thing for so many people to have this specific plant. I didn't experience that here in Australia. Everyone tends to have lawns and
Mm-hmm.
ornamentals, and it was before I stepped into my permaculture journey, but I do remember that potently. Like, what is this plant that everybody has here?
Yeah.
There's a reason for it.
Well, it's
Gorgeous.
good for so many different things. It's good for so many different things as well. Like, respiratory health, for stress support, it's adaptogen, antiviral, antimicrobial, immune support, digestive, metabolic health, because it stimulates Agni, digestion, which is very supportive, skin, circulation. And for fertility, it is actually, whilst the qualities of, generally speaking, it depends on the type of Tulsi, is more Ushna, it's more heating in quality. And it can also be slightly drying, depending again on the type of Tulsi. But in small doses, it can actually purify the uterus, support regular menstruation, and address infection or inflammation. And in my Ayurveda studies, one of the products that my teacher used to make and sell in the clinic, Professor Jason Chandler, is a combination of Brahmi and Tulsi.
Mm.
And it was just, I actually tried to recreate it myself, from the Tulsi, drying Tulsi. And I used to grow Brahmi as well. Tried to kind of recreate it myself, could never kind of emulate the perfect taste, but it's actually such a beautiful tea. So to the combination of Brahmi and Tulsi, for the liver, but also for the mind, for stress, it's just such a great tea that can be used as well, that I sometimes still prescribe as like a general, tea for women, and supporting themselves, their health, but also in small amounts can be really good to support hormonal balance and fertility as well. And that meant, with the Brahmi, it's adding that kind of support for mental and emotional well-being.
Oh, that's so interesting you mentioned that, because just in my most recent podcast with Liana Toth, she spoke to Brahmi as her favorite plant. So it's tying. Both of you have got this. Yeah, it'd be nice to try together. I don't think I've ever had a tea with them combined. So thanks for the inspiration. I'll wait until after babies come though.
It's good. It's yeah. Yeah, I love Brahmi as well. I mean, Brahmi is used in a lot of the formulations that I use. The ghees, very, very good as a Brahmi ghee. Very good for postpartum, actually, as well, to support mental, emotional well-being and support, in case there's baby blues and, to prevent or kind of support if there is postpartum depression. Brahmi is also a wonderful herb, in formulation. Can be very bitter on its own, but in formulation, with ghee and in these ancient recipes, there's Brahmi ghee or Brahmi Grittam, for example, is a beautiful, beautiful tonic that can be used in many situations: stress, anxiety, pregnancy, and postpartum as well.
Yum. Beautiful. Well, thank you. I think we've covered so much in this conversation. I guess it would be great if you could share with everybody, like, what's alive and thriving in your life right now.
Mm. Well, what's currently really alive and what I'm loving at the moment is just honestly the impact of the Fertile Essence program, and really being able to hold, the flag of this natural fertility path, rooted in Ayurvedic wisdom. It's really helping women, heal their cycles, their hormones, their nourishment, but also their power. Fertility work is so much deeper to me than just helping women get pregnant. It's this whole, like you said earlier, it's this whole philosophy, this way of living that, of course, they don't have to adopt, but it kind of, by osmosis, is just this path of well-being, this path of really feeling well without the rules, without specifics of, you don't have to do the body massage, you don't have to eat khichdi, like, but that's really what is alive and really thriving at the moment. And especially, having the Fertile Essence program and the pregnancy continuation of the pregnancy circle, the pregnancy journey. This is what's really lighting me up personally, is the women getting pregnant, through Fertile Essence and my fertility work, but then having a pathway to continue on together in their pregnancy and of early postpartum support, and being able to be a facilitator of that kind of community where it's empowering, it's, uplifting, where women are supported from really oftentimes struggling, to getting pregnant and then continuing that journey together. That is really what lights me up at the moment and what's really thriving. And it's so wonderful to see that more and more women are waking up to this truth that when their body is supported in the right way through plants, seasonal rituals, rhythm, and, really reclaiming that inner balance, their body knows how to heal, how to reset, and how to welcome life. And that's really the revolution that I'm so honored to be a part of, is because really a reclamation of that, divine feminine Shakti power that is, that's the honor. So
Mm. And that looks like a school, right? Like you have this online portal with all of these resources and invitation to join community events and, um, like a step by step what's happening through the entire journey from first trimester through to fourth. Um, so, yeah, it's, from my perspective of being
that's right.
part of all of it, yeah, it's really. It's a really special space to be held in, and to have that support, because for me that's my safe space, and that's where the information and what I'm wanting to implement into my life makes so much more sense than the alternative route of hospitals and that kind of birthing industry. So this is, for other mamas out there that kind of resonate
Yes.
with the alternative options. This is a really clear, um, and yeah, beautiful course, and I guess school community to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely more of an emphasis on having the right available resources for pregnancy. I do have some women that join just for the pregnancy program or the pregnancy journey, the Ayurvedic pregnancy journey. But a lot of the women are joining, which was my intention actually. A lot of the women are joining just straight from Fertile Essence. So, of course, Fertile Essence is much more kind of one-to-one and community and resources and herbal prescriptions available and included in everything that I offer. But then through the pregnancy, I find that, like you said, what's really valuable is just having exactly the right information from a natural and holistic perspective available at your fingertips. And then the addition of having the community and the live calls that we have together to kind of share and connect and actually do some practices together to have any of your questions answered. That's really what the pregnancy journey offers, and there's the additional, of course, to have the one-to-one support for pre-birth prescriptions or support for postpartum as far as nutrition and herbs is really, so invaluable, because if there is any time that we really, I feel, to utilize the power of plants, it is through fertility and pregnancy postpartum. This is the biggest transformation that a woman will go through in her life, even if it is second, third child, that having some herbal support and wisdom, is definitely really supportive during this time. So yeah, so happy to be able to offer this space for the women, and yeah, for you as well, to have to witness you blossoming in this next chapter of your life is just such an honor. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's been a journey because there's actually a lot of herbs and plants that I would normally take that are not actually supportive during this time. So, it is specialized advice, and it is good to lean on somebody who has done the training, like you are a doctor or having a qualified herbalist, um, because we can consume herbs that can bring on labor early, that we may have been able to eat in abundance prior to that. So, um, and for me, just walking out of the garden, just constantly, like even part of this journey of pregnancy was I ended up with influenza A, and my go-to is usually just to walk out and eat some andrographis leaves, and I will nip any cold or flu in the bud and not have any issues. But this time I couldn't. And so, without knowing, like sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So it's good to, yeah, just to have a qualified guide in this space, because it is, yeah, there's variations and special things to know.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, well, that's exactly it. Like a lot of women that I work with, actually, they're in similar fields, or they have a lot of health knowledge, such as yourself. And that's exactly why, the women I work with, I say, are health conscious. They're already like pretty down pat, like they're already, really far in their own health journey, whatever that is. They're really aware of herbs, of nutrition, of all of those things. But I guess that's what I kind of touched on, but didn't, bring to light earlier, is just that, yeah, you can have all this, like anything, right? It's a specialized field, but you can have the knowledge or the wisdom of certain herbs and what their benefits are. But where Ayurveda really kind of takes another few steps, in, of course, my opinion, but it's like we see so many ways of understanding the benefits of herbs. It's that relationship, like I mentioned. It's not we can't just look at an isolated herb. Of course, we can, right? That's Western herbalism, which of course is really amazing as well. But we it's not just looking at a herb and a list of benefits. It's looking at a herb, a list of benefits in relationship to you, in relationship you, your age, your capacity, your strength, you're pregnant, the season that you're in, the environment, how's your digestion, how's your appetite. So Ayurveda, that's how Ayurveda looks at herbs. It's much more kind of layered in its understanding of the use and application of herbs and herbal medicine. And of course, when we do that for one herb, then that kind of amplifies that complexity, or that nuance, I should say, when we look at compounds of herbs or we look at formulations. And that's what I really love about the use of plants, in in Ayurvedic medicine and the way that we utilize plants. And that's really the potency and the power and the difference, I guess, in understanding exactly what's exactly beneficial for you right now. Not that prescription that you had, or not, sometimes it's not the thing that you used to do right before you got pregnant. And that kind of keeps it alive as well and engaging, and it keeps your knowledge expanding as well.
Absolutely. The never ending learning and application. Beautiful. Well, anything else to share before we say our goodbyes today, Asha Lily?
I think it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for welcoming me to share and to kind of draw that parallel between Ayurveda and permaculture, because I just see that there's no gap, there's no division. It's just actually, a way of just looking at the same living science of life. And of course, science, when I think about science of life, it's fertility is a big part of that. So if anyone is curious to reach out, don't be shy. You can reach out to me on socials. I have a free Facebook community as well for pregnancy and fertility. So there's a lot of free resources that I offer inside there. I also have a free fertility mini course as well, if you're curious about kind of the Ayurvedic approach or things that you may have been missing if you are on your own fertility conception journey. So feel free to kind of reach out and get on to those resources if you like. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much, Toddy, for having me.
It's been a total pleasure, and we're going to put all of the links in the show notes below so people can connect super easy. Well, that's a wrap for this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it now with someone you know will benefit from this information. And remember, we're not just talking about change, we are cultivating it. Through these conversations and through the Elder Tree Patreon community, together we are sowing the seeds for an education center and healing sanctuary. You can unlock access to our treasure trove of wisdom via our Patreon, so you can do that in the show notes below or from our website. Please subscribe now and leave us a review. It really helps the bots share our podcast with the world, and your support ensures that this podcast and our vision can thrive. To grow them is to know them is to use them is to love them, and then happily herbs become your way of life. May you be blessed with good health and many plans.